In the golden heart of the ancient world, where the mighty Nile River curved like a shimmering serpent through the burning sands of Egypt, lived a woman whose name would echo through the halls of history forever. Her name was Cleopatra. But this is not the story of a tragic queen or a cold ruler. This is the story of a woman who used her mind, her courage, and her heart to save her kingdom and find a love that defied the power of empires. The sun was setting over the city of Alexandria, painting the marble palaces in shades of orange and violet. Inside the royal chambers, Cleopatra stood by a high balcony, looking out at the great lighthouse. She was young, barely 21, but the weight of a dying kingdom rested on her shoulders. Egypt was in trouble. Her brother had driven her out of the palace, and the Roman Empire, led by the powerful Julius Caesar, was knocking at the door. Cleopatra knew that if she did not act, her country would become nothing more than a memory in the sand. She was not just beautiful, she was incredibly smart. She spoke 9 languages and understood the mathematics of the stars. She knew that Caesar was staying in the palace, and she knew she had to meet him. But how? The guards were loyal to her brother and would kill her on sight. This is where her legend truly began. She called her most trusted servant, Apollodorus. She told him to wrap her inside a large, thick rug, a gift for the Roman general. As the servant carried the heavy bundle through the palace gates, the guards laughed, thinking it was just a rich carpet. When Apollodorus reached Caesar's private room, he unrolled the rug. Out stepped Cleopatra, her hair slightly messy, but her eyes burning with the fire of 1,000 suns. Caesar, a man who had seen everything, was speechless. He didn't just see a queen, he saw a partner. That night they talked until the moon was high in the sky. They talked about philosophy, power, and the future of the world. By morning, an alliance was born. With Caesar's help, Cleopatra took back her throne and restored the glory of the pharaohs. But life in the ancient world was never simple. Years passed and the world changed. Caesar was gone and Rome was divided. Egypt was once again under threat. This time, the danger came from a new Roman leader named Mark Antony. He was a brave soldier, a man of action, but he was also a man of deep passion. Cleopatra knew that to keep Egypt safe, she had to win Antony's heart. She didn't go to him as a beggar, she went as a goddess. She sailed to meet him on a ship with purple sails and oars made of silver. The smell of exotic perfumes drifted from the deck, reaching the shore long before the ship did. When Antony saw her standing under a canopy of gold, he forgot his speeches and his wars. He fell deeply in love. For years they lived a life of magic in Alexandria. They started a group called the Inimitable Livers, where they spent their days in feasts, games, and laughter. They would dress up as common people and wander the streets of the city at night, playing jokes and seeing how the real people lived. This was the happiest time of her life. However, the shadows of Rome were growing long. A man named Octavian, who wanted to rule the whole world, declared war on them. The battles were fierce, and for a moment it seemed like the story of Cleopatra and Antony would end in darkness. History books often say they gave up, but our story follows a different path, one of wisdom and a secret escape. Cleopatra realized that the only way to truly save Egypt and her children was to stop playing Rome's game. She knew Octavian wanted to lead her through the streets of Rome in chains to show off his victory. She would never allow that. While the Roman ships approached the harbor, Cleopatra was busy in her laboratory. She was a master of herbs and medicines. She didn't seek a poison for death. She sought a potion for a new beginning. She sent a message to Antony telling him of a secret plan. They would feign their defeat so convincingly that Octavian would stop hunting them. On a dark, quiet night, while the Roman soldiers were celebrating their supposed victory in the city below, two figures moved silently toward the harbor. They were dressed in simple linen clothes, looking like humble traders. They carried only what they needed and a few precious seeds from the royal gardens. As the boat moved silently across the water, Cleopatra sat at the front, her eyes fixed on the stars. She was using the ancient knowledge of the Egyptian priests to guide them. "Are you afraid, Antony?" she asked softly. Antony, who was rowing with steady, powerful strokes, looked at her and smiled. "With you, Cleopatra, I have forgotten what fear feels like. I only feel free." They stopped at small villages along the river. In each place, Cleopatra would use a different name. She spoke to the women by the riverbanks, learning about their lives. She realized that while she had been a queen in a palace, she had much to learn about the simple strength of the people. One night, they stayed with a family of fishermen. The family had very little, but they shared their bread and dried fish with the travelers. Cleopatra gave the mother a small blue stone from her necklace, not as a queen giving a gift, but as a friend. As they moved further south, the landscape changed. The flat sands gave way to massive rocks and roaring waterfalls. This was the land of the cataracts, where the Nile was wild and untamed. They had to carry their boat over land in some places. Antony's strength was tested, but he never complained. He felt stronger than he ever had in Rome. The physical work cleared his mind of the politics and betrayals he had left behind. One evening, they encountered a group of desert nomads. The nomads were suspicious of strangers. Their leader, a tall man with a face carved by the wind, blocked their path. Cleopatra stepped forward. She didn't use a royal command. Instead, she spoke to him in his own dialect, a language she had learned years ago in the libraries of Alexandria. She told him they were travelers seeking the mountain of the moon. The leader was impressed. He had never met a foreigner who knew his tongue. He offered them water and a guide to help them pass the dangerous cliffs. When they finally reached the hidden valley, it was more beautiful than they had imagined. It was a place where the water was clear and the trees were heavy with fruit. There were birds of every color, bright reds, deep blues, and shimmering golds. Cleopatra knew this was the place. "We will build our home here," she said. They began with a simple hut made of mud bricks and palm leaves. Antony, who had once commanded legions to build massive forts, found it satisfying to build something with his own two hands for his own family. He learned which woods were strong and how to thatch a roof so it wouldn't leak during the summer rains. Cleopatra focused on the garden. She had brought seeds of herbs that could heal fevers, plants that could make skin soft, and flowers that smelled like the gardens of Alexandria. Soon, the local people who lived in the hills around the valley began to visit. They were curious about the man who worked so hard and the woman who knew the secrets of the plants. Cleopatra became their healer. One day, a young boy was brought to her with a deep wound from a hunting accident. Using her knowledge of medicine, she cleaned the wound with wine and applied a paste made of honey and specific leaves. Within a week, the boy was running again. The people began to call her the Woman of Light. Antony, meanwhile, taught the men how to improve their tools. He showed them how to balance a spear better and how to build a system to bring water from the river to their crops, even when the rain didn't fall. He wasn't a general anymore. He was a neighbor. He found that he enjoyed the quiet conversations around a fire more than the loud shouts of a victory parade. Years turned into decades. Their children grew up strong and wise, blending the knowledge of Egypt and Rome with the spirit of the valley. They traveled occasionally to the edges of the great deserts to trade, but they always kept the location of their valley a secret. They brought back news of the world, of new emperors and distant wars, but to Cleopatra and Antony it felt like stories from another planet. One evening, as Cleopatra and Antony sat by a large rock overlooking the valley, Antony looked at his hands. They were rough and calloused, very different from the hands of the Roman noble he once was. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Do you miss the gold and the marble?" Cleopatra laughed, a sound as clear as the river. "Antony, look at the sky. No ceiling in Alexandria was ever this beautiful. Look at the people. They love us for who we are, not for the crowns we wore."